So for people that have been under a rock or hiding somewhere for the last however many days, Fury versus Usyk was apparently confirmed at the end of last week, subject to Fury emerging from the Francis Ngannou fight unscathed. It's likely to be on December the 23rd or in January. Big fight. First undisputed heavyweight title fight in the four-belt era. Both parties have reportedly, or no, actually coming from their own mouths, signed on the dotted line. It's been confirmed by Frank Warren, Bob Arum, Alex Krasuk. So all sides, Saudi as well, as someone in the chat just mentioned. Absolutely phenomenal fight, but has been met, this announcement, with probably an inevitable amount of skepticism. Ayman, what was your first reaction?
Yeah, so when I first saw that this was signed, I thought, you know what? All right, cool. This is something that hopefully I can get my teeth into a little bit, because we've had so many false starts, false kind of moments where we wanted these big fights in a year where, I mean, to a degree, it's somewhat more believable for a boxing fan to get behind this, because we've had a year where we've had some really big fights, that we've been clamoring for throughout the last few years of boxing. Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis, Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. Those two have come over the line. So in the realm of this year, it seems a lot more believable, or something to get behind than we have had maybe in previous years. But still, as a boxing fans we're often abused as opposed to treated. This seems like a treat that maybe might not be too near in our reach if we look into it more so than what is currently presented to us. But it does seem like to be movement. What I have done, Danny, is we've covered this in the signed, sealed, delivered portion in our instant reaction. So anyone want to go check that out, you can do. However, what I have done is I've sort of taken a little bit of a poll of some fans who have interacted with us across our social medias, and of course the fans who are listening in right now. So get your comments and thoughts. Danny's read off a number of them, but please get those in as to whether you believe the fight is going to happen or the result. But a couple of people or more than a couple of people have picked out here in their responses, and I'll read them as well too. We have DM5339. He says, never happening in December. He would have to fight Ngannou, come through that without a scratch, then go into the camp for Usyk. When was the last time Fury had 2 fights in 3 to 4 months? Very good point. Another point by a fella called Calnello Alvaroid says, haha, eat crow all the haters who keep saying Fury won't fight him. So maybe the Fury fans are happy now that this seems to be getting in motion. Pill Ray is saying, nah, I don't believe anything involving Tyson Fury until he gets in the ring, because his words don't mean poo emoji. I still believe he beats Usyk, though, with his sheer size manhandling him. There's no way he'd outskill or outpoint Usyk. Final one I'll read out here from Zane the Pain 8915. He says, not going to happen. It's just a publicity stunt for his fight with Ngannou. And to be fair, ending on that point, that does seem like, if you are someone who is a bit of a cynic, or maybe even, again, a fair reflection of these ahead of the line, they want more spotlight on this Ngannou fight.
Yeah, I can see why there is skepticism, but what would be the benefit on Usyk's side of confirming something that is maybe not going to happen? I can see how it benefits Fury and Ngannou, but what does Usyk get out of it? We've got a couple more comments, which I'll read in a second, but we have now got a poll up. We're going to be discussing the fight itself, who wins and how, in a little while, but you guys can get your votes in now if you want. Standard 4 options. We're not putting a draw up there. If you want that, go to your local bookmakers and do it there online, obviously. Know when to stop and all that. But yeah, you got Fury, obviously, points, KO, TKO, and the same for Usyk. Let us know what you think, and we'll reveal the results of the poll towards the end of the show. Nevin Pajkic again says, do you think the Saudis were less than impressed with Eddie trying to force their hands, constantly mentioning how much they paid AJ already when he had fewer losses and bringing up alternate venues? Maybe, but I don't think that's what pushed them to make the announcement. I think Eddie's still skeptical about whether the fight takes place, and I understand that. You know, he said for ages he thinks it doesn't happen, so he's going to have to eat a bit of crow, as someone kind of referenced earlier, but we shall see. Chris says, what are people going to say when Fury pulls out with a fake injury post Ngannou exhibition? I imagine a lot of them will say, I told you so, judging by this chat. Roger Cook, that's one from my childhood there, which I quite like. Is Fury about 25 stone again? Recent pictures of him, I don't think so, but we shall see. Z388Z, they announced to stop the Hrgovic mandatory, nothing to do with Fury and Ngannou. He's like 20 stone right now. Yeah, I mean, I've seen recent pictures of Fury. I've also seen clips of him on the Netflix documentary. He doesn't look particularly overweight. So I think, he's good to go, or he will be after a training camp. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that camp, because I interviewed Lawrence Okoli recently, the first major interview he's done since losing to Chris Billam-Smith. And he said they're aiming for a rematch in December and January with Billam-Smith, and he expects Sugar Hill to be part of his camp for that rematch. So the fact that their dates are lining up and they're both trained by Sugar Hill gives more credence, more credibility, I think, to the idea of Fury Usyk happening then. But just in terms of historical significance, this has got to be the biggest heavyweight fight since, I guess, the Lennox Lewis, not Riddick, we wish we'd seen that in the pros, Lennox Lewis, Evander Holyfield rematch, which was the last undisputed heavyweight title fight before the four-belt era began. Would you go along with that, Ayman?
Yeah, no, definitely. It will be the biggest fight. I think just in terms of boxing in general, like, we need this fight. This is a type of fight that we need, because I feel if my finger is right on the pulse, or at least the way the wind blows right now in terms of boxing, we've had let's talk from a UK's perspective. Obviously the US will kind of differ, but I feel like it kind of flows the same sort of way. We've had a big kind of rush of boxing spotlight from Froch and Groves, and that's kind of peddled into the introduction of AJ, has really kind of carried the sport over through the early 2000s into like 13, 14, 15, 16. And then you get 2017, where it's talk of Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua, that big fight happening. And then the rug gets pulled up underneath us. And then boxing kind of like from there, it sort of kind of drags along kind of nicely, but nothing really big happening until recently, where there's been a dip, I feel, in interest. And now there's a need maybe from these broadcasters and promoters and managers to get these big fights going, to build back up the interest. I think, as the cliche goes, as so goes the heavyweight division, as goes boxing, we need a fight of this magnitude. We need an undisputed heavyweight fight. And I think Eddie Hearn said as well in the reaction to this, like, this fight getting over the line gives him a bit of a kick up the arse to say, I need something to rival this. I need something to put myself up there. That's hopefully a good byproduct of what will happen if this gets over the line. It's just whether it does get over the line. I'm hoping and praying, like many boxing fans are hoping, that this does get over the line.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you classify as or class as over the line, because we've got them saying that everyone's signed. So, the only thing that appears likely to stop it is some sort of injury, not necessarily Fury suffering it against Ngannou, but maybe Usyk, something could happen to him. Lucan says, for Fury's greed, I hope Ngannou sparks Fury, or at least does some damage. He needs to get punished for holding the division up. Let's be real. Like Eddie Hearn said to a few journalists last week, I didn't ask him the question because I knew what the answer would be, because he said it to everyone else. Johnny Fisher, the current Southern Area heavyweight champion that he promotes, he feels could beat Ngannou in one round, such as his lack of experience in the boxing realm. Pajkic again says, with AJ and Wilder being beltless, does that affect the way Saudi sees them? Do they care more about the legacy of hosting Undisputed rather than just a mega fight? That could arguably cost them more. No, I think it's more just the shift in the balance of power in that region from Skills Challenge promotions and the people involved with them who were looking to promote AJ and Wilder, to the Riyadh Season group that were already working with Tyson Fury and Frank Warren to stage the Ngannou fight. So I think once they decided to get more involved in traditional boxing, and that fight they wanted was the undisputed one with Usyk, it was easy. There would be no real reason for Riyadh Season to suddenly start talking about doing AJ Wilder, because they weren't the ones trying to promote that fight in Saudi in the first place. So I think that's all that is. Chris says, you've seen the face-off of Fury and Ngannou, and you see the rolls of fat he was carrying. He hasn't lost that fat. Forget Netflix. The pictures at the face-off don't lie. They're the most recent pics. Chris, I'm going to take a wild stab in the dark here and say you don't like Tyson Fury that much. Just a guess. Could be wrong. Don't like to use the phrase haters, but let's be real here. We've seen Fury look terrible shape before, and then when fight night comes, He's in marginally less bad shape, but he can get the job done. He's got functional fitness. You know, he might not look like a body beautiful, but, you know, and I feel I can relate to him here. He can still be quite athletic when the situation demands. And, you know, we've got no reason to doubt him. I've never seen Fury turn up for a fight and not have the engine. So let's. Chris says I hate him. He's confirmed it. Thanks, Chris. I'm glad you're owning it. But yeah, so will it happen? I'm cautiously optimistic because everyone seems to have signed. Everyone seems to be singing from the same hymn sheet for the first time. There was no real warning that it was about to get signed until it was. And that's usually a good kind of indicator as well. When will it happen? I don't think it happens December 23rd. I think for all the kind of talk from Eddie Hearn and going back and forth about who should move their show if they do You Make Ben on that date, I just think it's too close to Christmas in terms of like the pay-per-view side and all of that, because obviously it's taking place in Saudi. But I also think it needs more time for a fight of this magnitude to be built to make it the pay-per-view blockbuster it could be here and in the US and in other countries. I think it's much more likely to happen in January. It also gives them time to get the infrastructure in place in Saudi to welcome all the tourists, everyone get their visas sorted, which isn't always a straightforward process. I think it happens probably in January rather than December. And I'm massively looking forward to it. Ayman, what do you think?
I don't know. I don't particularly think that the Saudis will care whether it's towards Christmas or not. I think they'll obviously put some thought towards that, but really, I think they're more concentrated on their own Riyadh season. So I think the two dates are probably to do with potential, you know, consequences of the fight with Francis Ngannou in case something does happen. But the reality of it is, look, if we're seeing this fight as everyone else is seeing this, apart from maybe some of the MMA community who have latched onto this fight that Francis could do something. The reality is that Tyson Fury should come through this fight unscathed, and the fight should happen at that first or earliest opportunity. I feel a bit bad, by the way, for Francis Ngannou, who's, you know, one comment said, you know, Vernon McCarthy said 8480 said, Howard Sultan couldn't at least wait until after the Francis fight to announce this. That wasn't in the chat, Danny. It was in one of our social media posts. And I get that from that point of view. Like, Francis must be feeling he's getting a bit of the short shrift here. Like, he's a bit of an afterthought in this point. And to be fair, actually, he is a bit of an afterthought in it. But still, you kind of you don't kind of tell him to it that kind of straightly, I guess. So no, look, I mean,
he's no longer giving main character vibes, unfortunately.
But I can't remember, Danny, any fight happening this close to Christmas, and whether the feeling is that this will no doubt be pay-per-view over in the UK. Whether anyone will think, oh, I know what a good Christmas present to get someone, the Tyson Fury versus Oleksandr Usyk pay-per-view. Like, well, is that a factor? I mean, in the UK specifically, where there'll be, aside from Saudi Arabia, the most interest, or maybe even including Saudi Arabia, the most interest, you're kind of putting your fans in a predicament where to say, in an economy where we're getting less and less money, Christmas period is tougher and tougher. Hey, here's a pay-per-view.
Yeah, that's the point I was making. Yeah, from the pay-per-view aspect,
and most likely an increase in pay-per-view. I would not put it out the realms of the possibility that they'll charge us a special price for this pay-per-view fight. And another increase in pay-per-view is another problem for potential buyers. So I'd like to think
pay-per-view in the US.
Say again?
Do you think it'll be pay-per-view in the US?
I don't think so. No, I don't. No. But then again, the predicament kind of stays the same, really, because January is still a short change month for people. So I think they kind of might end up just biting the bullet anyway and going with the earlier date.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Because January, you have January sales, don't you? I don't know if it's the same in the US, but certainly in this country, it's a tradition to go out and spend all your Christmas money in January, isn't it? And then have no money left by the end of the month. So maybe if they make it early January while people have still got some cash.